Hello again, another video on this radio. Now, a lot of people have been talking about changing the firmware on the Quansheng UV K5 to make it do things that it's not supposed to do. In other words, I could have called this video how to screw up your radio by making it do something it doesn't want to do. But we'll get on to that later. And I also had a question or a comment about what would be the spurious emissions like and the power output if you modify this radio to work on 27 megahertz. Well, we'll see in a while what happens when you try and make it transmit on 27 megahertz. So, somebody told me, I think it was G0 LNI, sent me an email about modifying the firmware, changing the firmware, and he told me to go use this site. UV mod is what it's called, and patcher and flasher. It's a bit of a strange term these days, flasher, but never mind. So what did I do? I downloaded this, and I don't do programming. I am absolutely fairly hopeless at computers, but I just learn as I go along. Gives you a list of instructions basically, and various other things. Now, down here you've got hidden mods, which is the bit you don't normally get displayed on the options. I mean, what we've got here, we've got apps, so we can change the S meter to a better looking S meter, and it is actually quite much nicer having done it with a voltage readout on the main screen also. That one I've done. I'm not interested in whatever this is. Spectrum analyzer, what's the point of a spectrum analyzer on a tiny little screen? I'm not interested in any of that. Pong game, no thank you. Battery icon, changes the battery icon to the more non-working variant. I think I've done that. Custom boot screen, not interested. Skip boot screen, don't want to know. Font, don't want to change the font. Negative display, no, not interested. Disable frequency copy timeout, not sure. Disable transmit completely, don't want to do that. And these are the dodgy ones, where you've got the option to enable transmit everywhere. Effectively, I think from 18 megahertz to maybe 1300, not totally sure, but we'll see later that it doesn't do that. Enable transmit everywhere except airband. Okay. Custom, you can set your custom transmit range, which is quite useful. You can also alter the backlight to stay on longer, because I was complaining it didn't stay on longer. So you can just select options to multiply by 1 to 4 or 8 the timing in the menu of the radio. You can increase mic gain. I've done that. I'm not so sure it's done anything at all. Don't need a Roger beat. SSWD port, don't know what it means, and they tell you if you don't know what it means, don't bother with it, because it's for people who know what they're doing. Custom frequency ranges, simple mode goes from 18 to 1300. That's fine, that's what I've done. Change the frequency steps, not interested, quite happy with what they are. lower frequencies, not interested, that's for weather. AM, receive on all bands, not interested. There's nothing on AM apart from aircraft, possibly CB. FM radio, 86.4 to 108, fairly good, pretty useful. Air copy frequency, not interested. LCD contrast, it's fine as it is, if you ask me. And then when you've chosen all these things, you click on patch firmware and it loads it in. Now it's ready to flash it, which I've already done, so I'm not going to go through all that. If you want to know how to do it, work it out yourself like I did. It took me a while to work it all out. But as we shall see soon, when I put it on my spectrum analyzer, it screwed up a lot of things on this radio now. Okay. And I'm not in the shed, main workshop, because it's so bloody cold in there. So I brought the spectrum analyzer in here. I don't need to measure the power with absolute accuracy, so I'm not going to do. I'm not going to need a RF power meter. But the spectrum analyzer is pretty well calibrated anyway for measuring RF power. I've always found it to be very, very close to my Agilent RF power meter. So now we'll get on to showing you what the results are on the radio. So here's the radio, and it's picking up a very weak signal on 144 megahertz, which may be coming from my workshop. Spurious emission. But here we have the new S meter, which does look nicer. We also got voltage display all the time. That's a bit annoying. But next to the S meter, and it's calibrated in S units, S9, S9 plus 20, but next to that we've got some numbers. Excuse me. We've got some numbers which go up and down according to the signal strength. And I'm sort of guessing they're an approximate attempt at putting a dBm figure in there, which is fairly hopeless. But the fact that this is a really noisy signal, barely breaking the squelch, and yet it's calling it an S9 or S9 plus 20, is a bit really useless, I think. If I did transmit with another radio here, we'll see what it does with that. S9 plus 50. So there you go. So I mean, they've made a half decent attempt, haven't they, of putting a half decent S meter on it. And I think the display's on longer than it was. I go to display setting. That's on 5. So I think it should be on for 10 seconds because I enabled it to be times 2 that number. So I think it stays on for 10 seconds now, which is more reasonable. And of course now we can go and change it on the VFO. This is go right down to 27,000 megahertz, because this person wants to know what it produced on that frequency. And I shall also look at the other common amateur radio bands, 50 and 70 megahertz, and see what they come out like with power and spurious emissions. So now I have to connect up the spectrum analyzer and show you that. Okay, so got the spectrum analyzer set up, measuring between 0 and I think 200 megahertz, and I've got the radio set to 27 megahertz. So if it's going to work, it's going to be somewhere down here. I see a signal, so let's transmit, and that's what we get, which is not very nice to look at, I must say. if I move my marker, or if I put my marker on 27, there was absolutely nothing on 27. And having a look at the screen, it's actually gone to 50, even though I'd set it to 27. So it just doesn't do it. But what is even worse is the sort of signals it's producing, because the peak output is on 100 megahertz. So 1.6 watts on 100 megahertz. Well, that's no good, is it? And then we've got something horrible down here. 50 megahertz, I'm getting 36 milliwatts. And that's on high power. Try changing the power to low power. Okay, it has dropped it down. And medium power. Yeah. But, I mean, all the signal is up here at 100 megahertz, plus a load of harmonics, which is no good whatsoever. And these harmonics are not that far down. I mean, that's half a watt, 150 megahertz. Forget that then. That doesn't work. Let's try 50 megahertz. Right, programmed in. More or less exactly the same. Left peak. I've got it transmitting on 50 and it's producing 27 milliwatts. High power is 35 milliwatts. Low power 6 milliwatts. Useless. Forget that. It's all the power's up at 100 megahertz. Which is exactly where you do not want it. Again, 1.6 watts, 100 megahertz. So you're not going to be using this on 6 meters. It's just really stupid. So the other one I want to try, 70 megahertz, when I can find the 7, because I'm looking at the radio at a funny angle. Right, nearly there, 70 megahertz. That's even more hideous. I'm getting nearly 4 watts on 140. And 8 milliwatts on 70 megahertz. If I change the power setting to low, I'm now getting 340 milliwatts. So it's screwed up the power setting. Try medium. Medium power is 52 milliwatts. But high power is 8 milliwatts. But, you know, this is where all your power's going. On the second harmonic of 70. So that don't work either. So, what's the point? It's not going to work, is it? Unless it's the firmware. There may be other versions. There probably are other versions of firmware. But I still don't think you're going to get this radio to do something it's not intended to do. It's got a VHF, UHF power amplifier in it. It isn't going to work properly below the range that amplifier was configured for. And you get hideous loads of harmonics. Let's try a stop frequency of 500. Yeah, hideous loads of harmonics. That one there, it will be twice the fundamental. It's about 20 dBs down, which is pretty awful. So let's just go back to 144. And we're on high power. Well, it's now only producing 3.4 watts. When I measured it on the power meter, it was around 4. But as we can see, because it's doing what it's supposed to do, the second harmonic is way down. And change the power to low, 2.2 watts, and medium is 2.4 watts. And before I finish this video, I'm going to check it on the decent RF power meter. But what is even more worrying that I discovered was, if we now go to 433 megahertz, let me type that in. And set the center frequency. Right, let's transmit on high power. 1.4 watts. So change the power setting. Low power 2.2. Medium power 2.65. Which, so now medium has become high on the radio, which is obviously screwed all that up. But it's still not producing what it did before now. I fully charged the battery before I started doing any of this. I'm only getting 2.6 watts at maximum output on 433 megahertz. So what I need to do really is just confirm that the spectrum analyzer is pretty accurate at measuring power. But it's not supposed to be a high accuracy power measuring device. That's what I've got the Agilent power meter for. So I'm going to briefly go in the freezing cold workshop. I think it's about 3 degrees out there at the moment, and check it on the RF power meter again. Okay, here we are in the freezing cold workshop, and where was I? 433 megahertz. Radio set to medium because that's become the new high power. And let's look at the power meter. 3.2 watts. So the spectrum analyzer was right. I have lost a watt, and the only thing I've done to this radio is changed its firmware. So I'd be quite happy to go back to the original firmware. Let's try the other power levels. This is high power, 1.6, and medium's 2.6. No, that's low. Low is on the radio. I'm getting confused. Low is now 2.6 and medium 3.1. So I've lost a watt. Just quickly, before I freeze, put it back to high. 1 4 0 0. Let's see what it does on 2 meters then. Four watts. That's what it was doing before. So it appears that I've lost power on 70 centimeters somehow. Enough of this, I'm going inside again. So, back inside, and my conclusions are that I wish I hadn't bothered to update its firmware, because I've gained virtually nothing, and it's buggered up the power setting. And I'd put it back to the original firmware if I could work out how to do it. You can download the file with the original Quansheng firmware on it, on that website. But I don't know how to put it into the programming bit. That's my problem. I'll get there eventually. But I think I'd like this radio back like it used to be. That's the way I feel about it. Other people might get different experiences to what I've done. Well, I really don't see that there's much to be gained apart from a better looking S-meter and maybe being able to receive all sorts of different frequencies. But there's nothing to listen to anyway, apart from maybe CB. And you won't get any decent CB signals on an aerial like that, antenna if you want to call it that. Anyway, that's just my interpretation of all this. So thanks for watching. Bye for now. Okay, quick follow up. I was not happy with that firmware. I managed to work out, amazingly, how you put the latest official version back in to the radio. And now let's have another look. On 433, on high power, 4.5 watts. Low power is 2.7 and medium 3.2, back to high 4.5. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave it alone unless somebody comes up with a better version of that firmware. So there you go, end of the story for now. Bye.